everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Rynsey. In today's video, we're going to talk about what I actually do for a living. But first, if you're new here, please like and subscribe, and thank you for finding my channel. So before I talk about what I actually do, and maybe some instances of things that I've done at work, I'd like to explain exactly what a physical therapist assistant is. Because more often than not, when I meet someone and tell them what I do, they assume that I stand in a corner and hand a physical therapist tools all day, or assist somebody, or I sit behind a desk at a physical therapy clinic, and that is far from what I do. Believe it or not, I actually have my life together somewhat. I'm a licensed therapist. I passed the national board exam, I passed the state law exam, and I am licensed to practice physical therapy in my state. Physical therapist versus physical therapist assistant such as myself. Basically, a physical therapist assistant is a full-blown therapist. I treat patients all day long at the hospital that I work at. What the difference is, a physical therapist does the initial evaluation and they can discharge patients and they can set the goals that a patient needs to achieve. A physical therapist assistant works under that evaluation, the direction that that evaluation gives us. So it'll tell us about the patient's medical history, it will tell us what their physical therapy goals are and things we can and cannot do. If there's a contraindication for a modality like e-stim or ultrasound, I won't be able to do those if that could harm the patient. But that's what it is. I'm given that direction and I build a treatment plan and I treat the patients and get them well and get them back home and get them back to their lives. It's a full hands-on job. I don't just sit there and hand tools to somebody. I don't type behind a desk all day. I just wanted to set that straight. The other big difference is to be a physical therapist, you now have to have a doctorate. And I went back to school when I was 30, and I just turned 39 the other day. I don't have time to go to college for a doctorate to be a physical therapist. To make a little bit more money than I make now, I am totally happy with my job and career. I feel fulfilled every day. I love what I do. I come home happy, and I love helping people. I didn't need all that extra school, especially going back to college at 30. That's just too much. I work at a large hospital, and I treat many different types of patients. I treat a lot of strokes, a lot of heart surgery, cardiac surgery. I treat a lot of patients with dementia, Parkinson's disease, Guillain-Barré, a lot of ortho as well, so hip replacements, knee replacements, people who have fallen and broken bones. Oh, and I'm primarily a geriatric physical therapist assistant, so I see a lot of people who are 65 and older, sometimes over 100, which is crazy. Some of my patients live at the facility all the time and need extra care from nursing and therapy, and I treat transitional patients who are there to get well and go back home. Those are usually your hip and knee replacements, or like broken bones from a fall, or somebody who had like an infection and became really weak in the hospital. Also, unfortunately, I treat a lot of COVID patients, and whatever your thoughts are on COVID, it's real, and it really, really harms a lot of people, especially the elderly. Please take care in protecting the elderly. But I've rehabbed a lot of COVID patients who were so weak that they couldn't even get out of bed. And by the time I was finished with them, they were walking out the door to go back home. It's a very fulfilling job. As I said, I treat a lot of stroke patients. That's probably my favorite type of patient to treat because you can really see the progress and you can really see them getting back to what they used to be. That being said, every stroke presents differently. Some people are affected so badly that they don't get anything back, and some people get almost back to 100% of their bodily functions. It's just very fulfilling to see somebody who, one side of their body, they can't move at all, and you're doing 100% of the work, getting them out of bed, getting them into a chair, standing them up, and weeks later, they start to take a step and they can start to get out of bed. And then weeks later, they can bear weight through both legs and not lose balance when you let go of them. And before you know it, they're walking down the hall with a walker and then walking down the hall with a cane. It's a really good feeling. The hardest thing about treating a stroke patient for me is keeping their morale up and keeping their motivation up, because a few weeks in and they're not seeing very much progress. I'm seeing progress, but the patient is not, because they still can't walk or they still can't get out of bed. You got to keep them positive so they keep working hard. It's the hardest thing for me, but over the years, I've gotten pretty good at keeping motivation up and keeping morale up. I don't know, it's the hardest part of the stroke patient for me, is keeping the morale up and encouraging them to continue participation. Another type of patient that I treat are heart surgeries, cardiac surgeries. People who have had an open heart surgery from myocardial infarction, a heart attack, valve replacements, or sometimes elderly people who have maybe had an infection or something that had put them in the hospital for a long time, and their endurance is so low that they can barely walk 5 feet anymore. Those can be a little bit tricky, because when someone has an open heart surgery, they usually have sternal precautions, which after surgery, you can't lift anything more than 5 pounds, sometimes 10 pounds, but more than 5 pounds. You can't push or pull with your arms because it uses your pectoral muscles and it can open up the chest wound. You're not really supposed to twist, and you're not supposed to bend over too far. Those can be really hard to enforce, because when you go to get out of bed, you roll on your side and push yourself up, and you can't do that. You have to adjust how you get out of bed. When you go up a flight of steps, you can't use the railing and help pull yourself up. It's just these natural things we're used to doing and you can't do. That might be the hardest thing. One of the hardest things about treating a cardiac patient, other than the motivation, because in their mind, they just had their chest cut open and had somebody working on their heart. But a lot of times the next day, they want you up and moving. They want your heart pumping and getting strong again as quickly as possible. So you have to really motivate people to get moving. You had a big surgery in your mind. You want to rest up and you want to heal, but you got to work that hard. It's got to get strong again. Our treatments with this type of patient is usually general endurance. I might put them on a new step. It's like a little stepping machine to get their blood flowing as a warm-up. We'll do leg exercises as tolerated, balance exercises as tolerated. We just want to keep those sternal precautions intact. And yeah, usually if somebody's able to follow their precautions, they can go home from me in a week or two. But the sternal precautions usually last 12 weeks or more. Or, if somebody has osteoporosis or something that affects their bone healing, it could be even longer. I also treat a lot of hip and knee replacement surgeries. Those are pretty cut and dry as far as what the treatments are. Each one, hip replacements have their own precautions, which are certain movements you're not supposed to do. But mainly you want to improve the range of motion, because there's a lot of swelling after the surgery. If you don't, the muscles will start to shrink and become contracted, and for example, you might not be able to kick your knee out all the way straight anymore. That's probably the hardest thing of those type of surgeries, because it hurts, especially the knee. I've been told the knee hurts a lot more than a hip replacement, but it's so worth it, because if you're suffering from arthritis pain, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but a knee replacement or a hip replacement will improve your quality of life. But I'm not a doctor. Talk to your doctor about that. And fun fact, the elderly ladies are really tough, and the elderly men are usually not so tough. They are the ones who do not want to do anything, and the ladies are the ones who want to get up and moving and out. And I can relate to that. I would probably be a huge baby if I had a hip or a knee replacement. Huge baby. I already know it. I'd be a crybaby. I also treat a lot of patients with dementia, and that has its own whole set of challenges. I won't get into too many of them, but you have to make them comfortable. You have to build a rapport with them, usually. And it's all about speaking with them in a way where they feel engaged, and it's hard to say. I don't want to say that they feel like they have control of the situation, but that they feel like a part of the situation, and that you're not telling them to do something. They're doing it with you. Sometimes if you go to change their atmosphere, they can get very agitated. So I do a lot of those treatments in the patient's long-term care rooms, or at least on their unit. I'm not going to get too much into that. It's a whole I could talk about that for hours, on ways and tactics that I have to engage with the patient population who have dementia. But that's a big group of people who I treat as well. I also treat various diseases like Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis. I've treated a person with Guillain-Barré before. That's a more rare disease. CP, cerebral palsy. Oh, well, I don't see much cerebral palsy. I have, but I don't see much. I treat people who have had just infections like blood infections or MRSA, or just an infection that just makes them incredibly weak. Once again, we just have to build endurance, build rapport, and get them moving and exercising. Another big part of my job is creating a home exercise program for when these patients go home and get back to their life. Creating the exercise program is not difficult. That's not hard at all. The hardest thing is convincing these folks to actually do the exercises, because it is necessary. If you have a loved one who's getting physical therapy, or if you need physical therapy, or if you're having a joint replacement, listen to your therapist when it comes to the exercises to do outside of therapy, because they bridge the gap and they help you heal quicker and they help you get stronger, and it will take your pain away quicker, and you will be out of that facility and back to your normal life so much faster. Listen to your therapist when it comes to, well, listen to your therapist about therapy interventions, but really, with the exercise program, I would follow the therapist with the exercise program. Being a therapist is a lot of fun, and it's very fulfilling, and I truly love my job. I'm really glad that I found this profession. That's something we can talk about. How did I decide I wanted to be a PTA, physical therapist assistant? I used to be in sales. Let me go back even further. Graduate high school, didn't go to college. I didn't go to college until I went back to be a PTA. But I had a well-paying job at the time. At least when you're 18, you think $12 an hour is a well-paying job. But I grew at that job. I was in sales. I worked for Nextel, an old cell phone company, which was bought by Sprint, which was recently bought by T-Mobile. But yeah, I worked for a cell phone company and I sold cell phones. And I was making commission. I was pretty good at it, but over the years, I did it for 12 years. It's so draining. It's soulless. Like, you're literally saying whatever you can to get a sale. Truthfully, I would always be truthful. However, my bosses and my supervisors would always, they wouldn't tell me to lie. They wouldn't tell me to bend the truth. But they wouldn't. You could tell they wanted me to say whatever I needed to say to get the sale. And that's not how I am. That's not how I roll. I'm an honest person, and I can't do that. And I would come home just like angry at the world and hating life, and I was just miserable, and I realized how miserable I was. And I started thinking and just brainstorming and trying to think of a new career that I could do. I was 30 by this time, and I didn't want to do something that I had to go to school forever, and I didn't want to do something that it was just like another retail job, and I didn't want to do something that was manual labor either. So I was getting frustrated with this job search, trying to find something, just failed interview, or it was some scam company that I'd go on an interview for. Somebody tried to get me into a pyramid scheme. That really made me quite angry, because he had me drive to the airport hotel to go to an interview, which was like 40 miles away, to interview me for a pyramid scheme. Screw that. And one day my father was getting physical therapy, and he said, I was talking to my therapist, and they were an assistant therapist. That might be something you want to get into. And I blew him off because I had no healthcare experience, no healthcare knowledge. I couldn't have named 5 bones in the human body. So I blew him off, unfortunately, and a few weeks go by. And I'm laying in bed, and I can't sleep one night, and that thought is in my mind about my dad saying I could be a therapist assistant. So I got my laptop and I looked it up, and the closest college that offers the course was literally right down the street. And a few days later, I signed up and I started taking my prerequisite classes, and a total of 4 years later, I'm a licensed practicing therapist assistant. And yeah, that's history. I love it, and I wouldn't change a thing. You could be a physical therapist assistant at an inpatient setting like me in a hospital, or you could be a therapist assistant at a nursing home or assisted living or an outpatient clinic, where people come to you for therapy. And I love being in a hospital inpatient setting. It's really fulfilling. I can see people right from surgery getting better, or right from their condition and they're getting better. I should say right from their diagnosis and getting better. And it's just more fulfilling for me. I can make my own, I'm given my list of patients and I can schedule them how I want to schedule them. I can fit my day together however I want to. I run around a lot. I don't stop moving all day long, but I wouldn't change it. I love what I do. I love where I work. I love the team of people I work with. I work with the best therapists in the state, and I love it. So yeah, that's how I became a physical therapist assistant, PTA. I always tell people, think of a physician's assistant, and I'm that for the physical therapy world, physical therapist assistant. A physician's assistant, they treat the patient too, and then the doctor comes in and leaves. Physical therapist assistant, I'm doing full treatments for people. I'm just like a physical therapist would. Real quick, if you're new here, thanks for watching. I appreciate you coming to the channel. You should check out this video too. It's very similar to this one in the Ramble style vlog, and it's got a lot of good feedback on it. Thank you for coming by, and please subscribe if you want more. There will be more videos in this series. Thank you very much.